What's up, guys? We got a new game with the black pieces against Mirti GT. He goes e4, we respond with d6, the Pirates attempting anyway to get into it. He goes knight f3, developing a minor piece. We develop a minor piece and attack a pawn in the center. There's someone watching this game, Mo Hamo. Why is he watching? That's weird. Who watches a 1000 rated player's game? Okay, so he pushes immediately e5, which threatens the knight. Drawback is it's not developing, so I'm going to take it. He takes with the knight. His knight's in the center. Okay. I'm just going to continue my developing. I'm going to fiend kettle this bishop and castle. Maybe I'll ask the knight what it wants to do first. I'm not sure. So he goes g4. What does this threaten? Maybe to kick the knight. What's the drawback? Severely weakens this diagonal. And if I go queen d5, I'm hitting the rook and the knight. So he'll have to maybe go knight back, in which case this pawn hangs. Also, the diagonal's super weak. So I'm going to do that. And I just have to make sure that there's no checks that hurt us. That doesn't, because it hangs, and also c6 is available. So he defends the knight, but doesn't see the threat on the rook. If I take the rook, I can't get trapped because this pawn's hanging. He also has no sacks that work because takes here. e6. So I'm going to take the free rook. And obviously the game is completely over. He goes g5. What does this threaten? It threatens the knight. The drawback is the game's basically over. He's perennially weak. He lost the rook. I'm going to throw in this check, because if he blocks with the queen, I trade queens, I'm up a rook. If he blocks with the bishop, no big deal. He blocks with the queen. I'm just going to take it because I'm up an entire rook. And now I have to move my knight because it's under attack. I'm just going to move it here because it comes with a threat. He develops his knight. I could take the pawn. I'm just going to, well, normally I would just trade because I'm up a rook, but then he opens his pawn and develops his bishop for free. And just out of principle, I don't want him developing for free. He goes here, developing, hitting the knight. That's fine. I'm going to move my knight. It comes with a double attack. He moves the pawn, and this pawn is defended. Attack my knight again. The problem with all these pawn moves, they don't do anything. Yeah, you get your pawn from here to here, but your pawn on d5 isn't better than, let's say, on d3. You know, your pawn here is not better than here. So you don't accomplish anything. So I move my knight in the center. Comes with another double attack. Like every time you push your pawn, you're weakening your position. But every time I move my knight, I'm not creating weaknesses like that, because pawns don't go backwards, but my knight can. He jumps his knight in, and this threatens this, but I have the same threat on the other side. Just for simplicity's sake, well, let's do a little calculation. If we take, right, and he takes with the bishop, check. Let's say we go c6, and he takes with the pawn, and we take with our b pawn, and he takes with the knight, and we take with our knight, he takes with our bishop check. It's not defended enough times, right? So we don't want to do that. Instead, well, my mouse isn't working. Instead, we'll just take his rook and let him take ours. Okay? I mean, we don't even have to. We could even play knight a6 and protect this pawn. It's interesting. Could also take his rook. We take his rook. He takes our pawn. I mean, I'm going to go knight a6 just because it's going to frustrate him. So psychologically, he's going to be like, ah, and that's worth it for me. I'm going to get my knight out of his territory. If I could take this d5 pawn, which is super weak, then he's doing really bad. He doesn't seem to defend it. He moves his bishop. What does this threaten? Nothing. What's the drawback? Hangs a pawn with more tempi. And now c6 is super strong because that pawn's not there to mess with it. And yeah, I haven't developed. I've been moving my knight around the board like 50 times. But it was mostly in response to his pawn moves attacking it. And while I was doing that, I managed to pick off 3 pawns while he managed nothing. So he develops his bishop. What's the threat? Extra on the rook is the threat. He's trying to some funny business. So you can do a lot of stuff. Luckily, this knight has no check discoveries. It has discoveries, but they don't come with check. So I'm just going to move my rook over. There's never anything on the diagonal. I'll probably never need to castle. I can fiend kettle this, and now I have perfect control of the dark diagonal. But now he retreats his knight. He sees this is never happening and offers to trade. I don't mind trading, but again, if I trade, his rook opens up. I don't want to open his pieces for no reason. So I'm going to develop my bishop with a tempo on the rook. If he takes my knight, he hangs his rook. And again, he doesn't have this. Unless he takes my knight first, and then he would have had it. But he does it in the wrong order. And now I just win a free knight, right? So if we go back, I took his rook. If he takes my knight, and I take his bishop, he then has this fork, right? Which is interesting because once he gives me this check, I have to go here with my king. He has other weird checks. That's funny. There's no mating net or anything, but it doesn't matter though, because even if he wins this, I take, move, take, right? I would, instead of being up 10 points of material, I'd be up, what, 8? So it's still bad for him, I guess. So what did he do? I took his free knight, and he pushes his pawns. Purposeless move. Has no function. I'm just going to develop this last minor piece and hit these two guys. I'm going to throw a rook on d1, d8, I mean. I don't care about any of my pawns. He moves the bishop. The threat is he's eyeing this pawn. But now I take the knight, and there's no threat anymore. He took something back. Now I move my knight. I even blocked the diagonal. He could double my pawns, but who cares, right? I'm up 2 rooks. He hits my king. I mean, whatever. It looks like my rook is blocked, but you have f6. He's just doing pointless things to prolong the game. I mean, not elongate, prolong the game. Purposeless stuff. None of it actually matters. I don't need this rook. Even if it's off the board, I'm completely winning. So I know I'm not playing, the most accurate, but who cares? You don't need to play the most accurate. We're not engines. We just need to play decent moves. And try not to lose on time. And play moves that frustrate your opponent so they make reckless moves. That's it. So now I'm just going to pin the bishop, and I'll even sack my rook. Like if he protects, I'll just sack it. And then I'll go f6. And yeah, I gave up a pawn here, but now my rook is free. He only has 1 piece, which he just hung. Resign. What are you doing, guy? So now I'm just bringing pieces in, of course. Did I just hang something? I think I did just hang something. No, wait. No, yeah, I did. I guess we'll keep the bishop. Actually, I don't care which one he takes. Take whichever one. I'll just bring my king in. I'm just making completely random moves. Okay, he's kind of walking into a net, so now let's see, how do we do something? Is this a move? Whatever, we get a little closer. He goes further in the net. Okay, we need to move our king in. This is checkmate. Okay, so he gets out of it. So we threaten checkmate again. He gets out of it. Wait, what? Oh, I see. Now let's force him back down. Duh. He saw checkmate the first time, but not the second. Real nice. That makes no sense. So we were up so much material, we literally could do whatever we want. He goes e4, we have another d6 game. He develops his minor piece out, we develop ours, right? He brings out his bishop, and we go g6, trying to play some type of Pierce setup. He brings out another minor piece, he's ready to castle. He was doing so well, this 1100, so well until knight g5. What does this threaten? Threatens to take my pawn on f7. The downside is I'm going to castle and there's no more threat. And I'm solid and his knight could easily be kicked. So it's a slight waste of time, perhaps. I could kick it immediately. I'm going to kick it immediately. And now he has to basically go back to where it came from. In which case, okay, I'm going to develop my knight towards these central dark squares, and then I was going to say I was going to pin his knight, but he didn't let me pin it. Fine. That works for me. Instead, I can't pin it. I don't really have a good square for this minor piece yet. I'm going to move my knight here and try to win his bishop for my knight, because that's his best minor piece right now. Maybe this bishop, the dark square bishop, will be in the future, but right now this is the one putting pressure on my position. So now I could take this. It would open up his rook, but I would get the bishop. That's kind of nice. I'm going to take the bishop because I want the bishop pair. And now this knight is actually kind of stifled a little bit. I could retreat it here, which increases my scope on the dark squares. But let's control it a little more with c5 in Sicilian fashion. Control the diagonal. And he goes knight e2. Maybe he wants to play c3 and d4. I'm not sure what his idea is, but relatively passive. It's not threatening anything. You know, I don't have to react or anything like that. I can continue queenside expansion since that's where my pawns are facing. Also, he can't develop his bishop. I mean, he can, but he has to watch out because of tactics. I'm just going to go b5. Gain some space on the queen side and allow me to fianchetto my bishop. He goes c4 to meet my b5. This threatens to win a pawn, but it also would triple isolate his pawn, so that wouldn't be good for him. The downside is it weakens these pawns, it weakens this pawn. I can push past it, meaning none of his pieces can ever touch the c3 square again. Pushing past, if I push past and he tries to break in the center, he then hangs the central pawn. So that's useful. Maybe I shouldn't have pushed it, but it's okay. He does try to push in the center because if I take, then my b pawn does become weaker, even though I have a5. But it hangs this central pawn. His e pawn is very important, so I'm going to take it. Without his e pawn, his position gets a lot worse because he always had ideas of, let's say, e5. So instead of taking the pawn, he continues pushing. What does this threaten? Nothing. What's the drawback? It just further opens up the diagonal for my bishop. And now these squares are just firmly under my control. And he can't put a piece there, so that's just severely limiting for him. Okay, now fianchettoing obviously makes less sense. So we're not going to do that. Our bishop's good. Our knight's good. So let's attack this to give some room for our pieces. We need to develop our light square bishop and our rook on f8. And I feel like e6, threatening to take, resolves both issues. And if he takes, well, then you could take with the pawn and that resolves it a different way, right? So I'm trying to fix my development. So he moves his knight. This doesn't threaten anything. It's basically to protect this, so if I take, he can put a knight on a nice outpost. Drawback is moving the same piece twice. And I can kick the piece before I take, right? I think a bad move that a lot of people, it's not bad. No, it's not bad. Like if you play e5 here, it kicks the knight and you have a lot of central control. So you're still doing fine. Obviously, then you can play f5, you're fine. But you also close the bishop's diagonal, so you don't have to do that, is what I'm trying to say. You could try to kick the knight, and if he moves to the side, then you can take the pawn. That way the knight can't capture. You don't have to do that. If you do take and he takes with the knight, what's your move there? Let's say the knight threatens nothing. It has no forward jumps. You could throw a rook over to e8. He'll probably castle to get out of the discovery. And then you can go after his knight with either your bishop or a knight back to f6. I don't really see the point in that. Huh. I think I'm going to start. I also want to get my queen in the game. So let me think about that. What does this do? Does it do anything? It just blocks my bishop, maybe. Also here, I could move my bishop back so his knight is kind of stuck. I don't know. Hard to tell. Again, if I kick the knight, then it's forced to go back somewhere. And then I play f5. And I'm the only one with the attack on the king side. I guess that's a way to play. It does close down the position. But I'm going to do it. I know I told you don't do this, but I don't even listen to myself, so. I mean, I was thinking the other lines are fine, but letting him get a knight or a queen here, it's not a problem. You can always kick it or just leave it there. But doing it this way, I mean, he's so stifled. He really has nowhere to go, nothing to do. And now I'm just kind of crushing him, slowly steamroll, burying him alive. So I chose this. Why give him a piece on d5 when I can just have the best King's Indian attack you've ever seen, right? So he just castles. Now I can move my knight threatening to push with a fork. That's interesting. I could continue my pawn storm. That's interesting. Get my queen a little closer, like queen f6. That's interesting. Try to improve my bishop one square. That's interesting. Lots of interesting things. I kind of like my knight here, though. And the threat's dodgeable, so it's like hope chess, so. This move might look weird, rook f7, but it defends this pawn and prepares to go to the g file to hit the king in the future. He moves his knight to prepare to move his f pawn. or his G pawn. I'm guessing his F pawn. The drawback is moving away from the center. And if he does push, let's say his plan is to push, I can hit the rook intermezzo. Rook goes here. Wait, no. Does he want to push 1 or 2? If he pushes 2, I don't even need to move my knight or address it. If he pushes 1, then I can go here and his rook can't attack me. So that's fine. So another drawback of this move is it opened up this square. So now my queen can get in. I'm going to throw my queen in there. Get it close to the king. I have a centralized knight, a rook, and at a moment's notice, this pawn up the board can create some sneak attack on that pawn. And we have an overwhelmingly strong position. He brings his queen. I wasn't expecting this. I thought he was trying to move his F pawn. He moves his queen. Doesn't threaten anything. The drawback is there's not a lot of room, so he kind of has to be careful. And he's also not developing his pieces. I think now I can move my knight back and threaten what I was trying to threaten before. Although then he can move his queen over, so we don't want that. I guess I'll leave my knight there. Continue the pawn storm. Does that trap my queen though? Yeah, maybe my queen is too early over here. I guess I'll move my queen back. I guess I moved it too early. Because if I go here, actually, can he even hit my queen? He can only hit it here, but that hangs a pawn. So maybe my queen is fine. I don't really know. If I lose my queen, I'll lose my queen. I'm going to lose on time soon, so I'm going to lose either way, right? So now I create a further pawn storm. He does go for this. I thought it just hangs a pawn. So I'm going to take it. A defender of his king, quite important. And now I have moves like f4 and g4 to consider. I don't like g4 because it closes everything down, although it does make his knight look really stupid. He moves his king and pins his own knight. I'm fine with that. No complaints from me, sir. So now I feel like this knight's misplaced. It kind of needs to be here. So I want to reroute it here so it could help with the kingside attack because the pressure on f2 is never going to amount to anything. I might be blundering stuff because I'm rushing because I have less than a minute. It's panic time. I am going to go here since his knight is pinned. This would force a bunch of trades. I'm up 2 pawns with a strong center. And you can see that putting this rook here also allows me to double when I want without hanging the pawn. The knight was strong here, so you definitely did have other moves. Like getting your bishop out of the way. Although, where's it going to go? So this move's fine. It comes with this threat. He has to notice that threat. He can't dodge it. Now he can, but afterwards this wouldn't work because I would take with check and then take the knight. So now he's here, which is fine for me. I'm up material and I'm down on the clock severely, so I'm going to trade and then push in the center knowing he has no forward jumps. And his knights are the worst knights I've ever seen in all of chess. And now I'm going to move my knight so I could reroute it into here. And also my bishop's very nice. If he moves his bishop, That's a boom. I don't want to trade my knights for his knights though, because his knights are terrible. So maybe I don't want to like, you know, just offer a trade for no reason. I don't know. He goes back. En passant only helps his position. So I'm going to close the position, making his knights even worse, giving myself a passer, making his rook worse, cramping him. Now you can see he has like no squares for his pieces. He has to stay on the first and second ranks. Although I don't have time to think, so I'm kind of auto moving. That's not good, but what are you gonna do? I'm just making random moves so I have time to think. My bishop is totally and completely stuck now, so I might just sacrifice it. He might sack his rook, so only pre-move. But that would just give me two connected, strong pass pawns in the center. Okay, he's not going to take it. I'm going to push my A pawn here. He really has nowhere to go. So I'm just going to push full force on the A file. I could try to do it through here and throw a knight in, but that requires a lot of like calculation, and I don't have time for that, obviously. I'm going to sack my pawn back because I can't think, and then just push on the A file. He now can push on the C file though, which is less desirable for me. My knight's also misplaced. It needs to be now on C5, so that's a two-move reroute. But I push the A pawn to create immediate problems. Also, in any endgame, my E pawn wins. So I'm thinking this. I'm thinking this. I cannot click this. There's no way for him to like defend properly because his rook will hang. So he has to do something. He can finally move this bishop because I don't have mine. Maybe, you know, like this is targetable. I'm not really up anything. I only have 27 seconds left. I had a completely overwhelming like +5 position. In a classical game, easy to convert. You know, nice and slow. But you can see what's happening. You can see how white has all these problems. He takes the pawn. I take back. He'll probably trade because moving the rook over to b1 is a little weird. And he can't defend the rook. This will give my rook the only open file on the board, and I'll try to harass him on the first and second ranks. The only ranks where he can even move. So he does trade, and now I'm looking at rooks in here. That would increase the power of my position a lot. Again, this is an amazing sequence because it traps his rook. But rook a1 is probably strong. But then after this, I feel like I'm reacting, so maybe not. So he puts his bishop on a worse square, doesn't come with a threat. So I'm going to do the knight thing first. Well, depending on what he does, I may move my rook next, or the knight next, or the bishop next, if he moves his rook. It all depends. But now at least this knight is only, you know, it's defending this push, defending, and it has faster knight hops. He moves his knight. I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to target the pawn. Probably should have jumped my knight in, but not thinking. Pin the knight, which means his bishop, I can distract it. Jump my knight in here, threaten this pawn and this check. 16 seconds, not enough time. If we take this pawn, his rook is trapped. Wait, his rook is trapped because he put his knight there and it's pinned. He trapped his own rook. Thanks, guy. Now we win his rook. His knight's pinned. Now we take it with check. And then we get to take the knight, no matter what he does. And then right. So no matter what he did, move or take, we take the knight, and no matter how he recaptures, we take that piece, we sack our rook, he takes with the king. So now he only has a king and 4 pawns. We then take one of the pawns with our bishop. So now he has a king and 3 pawns against our bishop and 4 pawns. Completely winning for us. Okay, almost lost some time. Almost butchered the position. That's fine. It's part of learning. Hopefully you got something out of that. We climb up a little higher. Catch you on the next speed run video. See how high we can go. It's a Mitchell Rapid Games, guys.